Welcome to the Kit Taylor Talk Show. I'm your host, Kittrick Taylor. Thank you for tuning in. Listen, we have a great show lined up for you. First, I want to give you a disclaimer. I am not a doctor, I'm not a therapist, or a counselor. My show's purpose is to simply bring awareness to the topics that are at hand with the mindset of helping someone's or saving someone's life. So today's show is going to be on dementia. Dementia. Dementia is an umbrella term used to describe a range of neurological conditions affecting the brain that gets worse over time. It is a group of conditions characterized by impairment or at least two brain functions, such as memory loss and judgment. Let me give you some staggering stats about dementia. 55 million people have dementia. 60% of those 55 million of them live in middle and low income areas. There are 5 types of dementia. But first, let me mention every year, 10 million cases gets reported. New cases gets reported. That's amazing. There are several types of dementias, but we want to talk just today about Alzheimer's and vascular. Today, Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is the most common dementia out there, followed by vascular. Alzheimer's is the most common, as I said. It's a progressive disease that destroys memory and other important mental functions. So with that said, let's bring on our first guest, Miss Crystal Morrison, who basically has dealt with this firsthand. But I'm gonna let her tell her story. How you doing, Crystal?
Fine. Good afternoon, Kittrick. Thank you for having me on your show.
Well, thank you for even thinking about, tuning in, because I know there's a lot of things that you could have done and could have been doing, but you chose to help the Americans, myself, and everyone out with this. So talk to me a little bit about who is Crystal? Talk to me, Crystal.
So I am just a small town girl from Mount Vernon, Illinois, and I moved to Minnesota and got married, and I have one child. And, it's not too much about me, but over the
So,
years I'm sorry.
okay, okay. Well, we're gonna get into you. I want to know more about you. I'm gonna learn more about you as far as with the same audience. We're gonna learn more in detail about you. But we actually are here because we're talking about dementia, okay? And we had a talk, and we've talked many a times about what this show is all about. And it was great that I think that it was so amazing how God just put you in front of me for me to use you as far as your story to help people. And then not only that, you to have a story such as you do. It's amazing. So when we talked, Crystal, we're going to take our time. You said that your husband is suffering from or suffered from past vascular dementia. Talk about that. Am I correct?
That is correct. So around 2018, I started seeing some behavior changes in him. And I wasn't quite sure what they were, but I kind of had a clue that he might have dementia. And so I set up an appointment with a neurologist. And so January of 2019, he officially got diagnosed with vascular dementia.
And when you say things was off, look, just give me some things that you saw was off. And why did you go straight to it might be dementia?
I noticed that my husband, he knew the Twin Cities like the back of his hand. He knew how to get around very well. Then all of a sudden, he seemed to be getting lost or confused or just driving and with no real destination, just driving. And I started questioning, you missed your turn there. Are you aware you missed your turn? And he started getting kind of aggressive
When you
whenever I
say
would
that,
question certain things
go
that
ahead.
he was doing that was, just not normal.
Wow. Okay. And you noticed it, and of course he didn't. But you wanted to be safe, but you want to make sure he was okay and no one else got hurt. But you said he started being aggressive. Like, and what tone of voice or what that did that aggressive look like?
Yeah, it was his responses. Um, I think he was trying to hide that he was having some type of decline. He didn't really want me to know what was going on. And so instead, he would come, his responses would be very aggressive. He would say statements like, you wait till you get there.
Mm,
I
okay.
will mention that my husband, he was like 22 years my senior. So there was kind of like a big age gap.
Wait,
And so
22
that was,
years? Wait, I'm gonna stop you. I love it. This is what we're talking about. Because we talked about, you said 22 years?
yes,
Okay, great. Okay. All
22
right.
years my senior.
A lot. Yeah.
So his favorite response was, wait till you get there. And I was
Okay.
like, doesn't mean that I have to get there when I'm your age or anything. And so it would
Wow.
just always be in that tone that he would say, trying to hide whatever was going on.
And he was, like you say, he's trying to hide, but not really knowing, like, wait till you get there was really a juncture that was about to happen. And we didn't know, unfortunately, at that time. So, okay. So, Crystal, I'm going to talk to you, but I want you to share with us the feeling. Now you put it out there. Now your husband, you know he has it. You know it's something going on. Tell me your aggressive steps after that when you said you wanted to seek help. So what steps did you take? Talk to us. What was your feeling and so forth?
Well, in the beginning, I did not seek help.
Okay.
In the beginning, I thought that I could handle it. I'm not a stranger to being a caregiver or anything like that. When his mother was suffering from heart issues and stuff like that, I took care of
Okay.
her until she passed away. And so I wasn't a stranger to caregiving. And
Okay.
so I thought that I could do the same thing for him.
Okay.
And years went by and years went by, and then it started getting progressively worse. And his aggression towards my son and I became more and more increased. He would, oh, what happened? Did I lose you guys?
We're
Okay.
good. I think you're okay. Yes, go ahead. Uh-huh.
He started becoming more aggressive. He started hallucinating. He started becoming more delusional. And at that point, I was still trying to manage everything myself. And
Wow.
someone mentioned maybe have somebody come in the house to help me, you know.
Now, at that point, though, Chris, I'm going to stop there. At that
Okay.
point, did you feel? And I'm not cutting. I just love where you're going with this, and I kind of like what you said. So when you said have someone come in, was there any reservation about bringing somebody in on you guys, on your family? Uh, how did you feel when that came across? Was you okay with it, or you had to think about that?
At that point, I was okay with it, but he was not okay with it. And he wasn't going to have anybody come into the house. And so I
Okay.
had to kind of like scrap that idea. And so I just continued to try to take care of him the best I could. But because of the type of dementia that he had, vascular dementia, where the cells in the brain, they're not getting enough oxygen. And so they were starting to die. Like you mentioned before, it really started affecting his judgment.
Wow.
And he just became very uncooperative in a lot of ways. He
Okay.
didn't want to bathe anymore. He didn't really want to go outside anymore. And during that time, it was during COVID. And so he
Yeah.
became very paranoid. He didn't want us to open the windows, open the doors, or anything like that because he thought that we were letting in the virus. And so his behavior just became worse and worse as time went by.
He felt something though. He felt something. Would you say that it was something different? Would you say that? I'm just asking. Do you think he felt something, and that's why he became like not want the doors open, windows open, and so what do you think that was about, or was it just a habit thing?
Had started becoming delusional,
Okay.
and he had started hallucinating and thinking things were happening that were not happening.
Mm,
That's what I think that was. I don't know if he really realizes what was going on
wow,
because he never would admit that he had dementia. All the way up until when he died, he would never say that he had dementia.
wow. So I just study this. I'm not a doctor, as I said in my opening. I'm not a clinical therapist. I'm none of that. But do dementia patients, do they even know? Let's go to straight, okay, dementia is that umbrella term, but now you're talking about Alzheimer's. Now you're talking about vascular. Do they even, are they even aware that they're doing things off? Is that like a world where they're just used to and not knowing that from the outside eye, it's kind of different? Do they even know at any point that they have dementia per se? Because I forget keys all the time. So I say I had a dementia moment. So do they even know? Do they even know?
And that's kind of like a hard question to
Yeah,
answer
yeah.
if they really know. I just know for years he would deny it. And then towards the end, once he was trying to play the piano and he was forgetting how to play the piano, and he did make the statement,
Mhm,
"What's
mhm.
wrong with me? There's something wrong with me." And that was
Okay.
the only time that he really questioned that something was going on. Other than that, I
Yeah.
think he was in his own world and I was in we're in our world. And I had to just realize that his world and the way that he was thinking and looking at things just didn't coincide with the real world.
You just wanted it to be right. You knew it was off. You knew this is what normal behavior. So your point was, let me see if I can take care of my husband the best way I can, and perhaps I don't know if you ever thought it going away, but did you just get comfortable in that state? So now you're turned into a true caregiver at this moment. You said you did caregiving for your mom, am I right?
To his
So
mother.
his mother, I'm sorry. So you already had the caregiving mode on. So now you're a caregiver for your husband. Talk about that feeling.
That was very, very difficult because it was totally different from when I was taking care of his mother. Um, that was kind of easy. I would say it was very easy. But when people are suffering from cognitive decline, it's a
Yeah.
whole new ball game. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to respond when he would say certain things. And I must say, I think I really failed miserably. Tried to use reverse psychology a couple of times on him to try to get him to do what I want, which didn't work at all. And so after a while I was trying to communicate with him, um, I realized that he was getting the better of me and he was starting to wear on me.
Explain
And
that. Explain that part in depth if you can. Get the better of you.
us, he was like, he would get up in the morning, from the time that he would get up in the morning to the time that he went to sleep. It was just a constant battle with him. And I just didn't have a breather in between. And it was just a constant nagging towards me because at some point he had to stop driving
Yeah.
and I had to hide his keys and he wanted his keys. Eventually I got rid of his car and he wanted his car and he just wasn't going to give me any peace until I gave him his keys and brought his car back. And so from the time he got up to the time he went to bed, he
Wow.
let me have it.
He let you have it. Now, how did you give in? Like, say, early in the game. When I say not game, early in the situation of you becoming a caregiver, did you give in most of the time when you first started, your status first started, and then later, as it got worse, you said, "No, you're not getting these keys." You put your foot down after a while, correct?
Um, no, I never gave in.
Oh, okay.
And
There we go.
I stuck to the
All right,
guns.
Crystal. Good.
Most of the people, at first I didn't take the keys away. I had some friends and um, they made the suggestion that, you need to hide his keys because he's going to sneak and he's going
Oh,
to try to drive. And
oh,
so I didn't want him to do that because I didn't want him to hurt himself, nor did I want him to hurt anybody else. So that's when I started hiding his keys. Now,
he
it's a
thought he had it.
great suggestion from people
Go ahead.
because they've been through it or they've seen somebody go through it, but they don't tell you about the backlash that you may receive from doing these things, which were good. It was good advice, but
Okay.
I did get a lot of backlash.
Of course. Okay. That's tough. I know a few people that have dealt with it, and they did talk about the backlash. It was almost like a true battle. Like, let's go, no. But on that note, that's a great point for the audience. So I want you, Crystal, at this moment to it's a question which I think anyone would feel. But was there any moment during this caregiving state of your husband that you wanted to just throw the towel in? I'm just gonna. I'm just going to get them to a home or let them deal with them at the hospital. Was there any moment that came to mind with you, Krista?
There were several moments. And that's how I know it was starting to affect me, because on several occasions I was starting to have um, a breakdown, I guess you can call
Okay,
it,
okay, okay.
um,
Mm,
in front of friends, at work, on a conference call. I just kind of like go off the deep end, and I don't normally do that. And it's just like, okay, I just can't deal with this anymore. I can't take this anymore.
mm.
And then a friend of mine once came over and she observed what was going on in the interaction I was having with him. And she said to me, Crystal, you need help. And at that point, I said, okay, I hear it from you. I hear it from his doctor. His
Mhm.
doctor kept telling me, Crystal, you're just going to have to bite the bullet. You're going to
Explain that,
have to,
bite the bullet. Bite the bullet. You were talking bite the bullet. What does that mean? Like,
I was going to have to get him into a nursing facility,
there
because
you go.
his
Okay.
doctor told me it's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. And I
Uh-huh.
can't keep trying to take care of him in the home.
Wow. So just want to just go ahead and just give your husband to the caregivers outside of you and let them deal with it. That's what they thought that you should do. So go on, move on. So once you was hearing this, so what ended up happening at that point?
Well, I kind of knew that I wasn't able to take care of him or give him the care that he needed, because I'm not a professional in that field. But I also knew that getting him into a nursing home was going to be quite expensive. They're not cheap. And so
Okay.
that was I was very reluctant to do that,
Okay.
because it's like, okay, I don't even know how to go about getting him into a nursing home. And during that process, I learned a lot of things. One thing that I did learn is that you just can't put anybody into a nursing home. They looked at me as, you're just his wife, and that just makes you the next of kin. We
Well,
only deal with the decision makers, and you are not his legal decision maker. So I
so
had to go through the courts to gain guardianship over him, and before I could
your
even
own
think
husband,
about putting him
your
into a
own husband. Wow.
facility.
Wow. So once you sign that paper to them, they expect for you just to go away. If you want to come visit, they allow you to visit, but you have no decision making, nothing like that.
Yeah, you just can't put somebody in a nursing home just because you say, okay, I'm family, I'm going to put them there. It's like, well, no, you have to be either have power of attorney over that
Yes.
individual or become their legal guardian.
Wow. Well, Chris, I can only empathize with what you went through. Um, so at this point, you lost your husband in January of 23. Am I correct?
Of 23.
23, yes. Okay. So now you hit on it earlier. You talked about you was giving advice, to the audience per se. So what other advice can you give someone that is actually, because I know someone's watching that is dealing with the same thing, that has vascular or Alzheimer's. What advice as a caregiver can you give me? Some don'ts, don't do this, and then give me all the good. This is what you should do, and this is my advice to you. Is there something that you should never do as a caregiver?
Yeah, I would say don't argue with them.
Don't
And
argue
I
with
had to learn the hard way.
them.
They would
Okay.
say something, he would say something,
Okay.
and it doesn't make any sense to try to explain to him, well, no, 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 it didn't happen that way. Or don't you remember, you know, don't use the word don't, because they don't remember.
Mm,
And,
mm.
after a while, I just started agreeing with him, because I found that that was going to be a lot easier. He's in his own world. And when he would say something like, how's my mom doing? Even though she had passed away, 10 years ago, I would say she's fine. And
Wow.
anything he'd ask me, I would say, it's fine,
It's
or
fine.
they're fine. And then life was easier. But when you try to explain things, oh, so and so passed away, then he would break down and start crying. And why didn't anybody tell me? So why put them through that type of emotional distress? And I just decided to start agreeing.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
that's some of the don'ts. Don't disagree with them. Let them go with it. I know it's hard, but let them go with it.
You know, I once said, go into their world, and somebody said, no, we're not going to the world because what you're doing is just allowing them to do whatever they want. It's a different phrase. I'm saying what you're saying. It's like, as long as they're not hurting themselves, and as long as that they're not hurting someone else, and they with them, whatever they do, then let them be. You know, you got to just watch them and make sure nothing serious happened. Am I correct?
Right, correct.
Okay. Yes. Okay. I think I lost the volume. You still there, Crystal? All
Yes,
right,
can
we're
you
gonna
hear
keep
me?
it rocking. I'm gonna ask my assistant, William, my buddy. I'm gonna ask if he grab something. There's a book over there on the table. I know this is off, but it's a book over there on the table. Because Crystal, what I want the people to know is that your story is just a great story that's on. But throughout this, and because of your story, just the book is fine. Throughout this, and because of your story, you've written a book. Am I correct? And her book, you guys, is called the Long Goodbye. The Long Goodbye by Crystal. Okay, Flippen
Mention the long
Morris.
goodbye.
The Long Goodbye. Yes. So she's not just talking about this. She really wrote about it because she felt like as caregivers, you need more. We just talked on a smidget of what's happening, but caregivers, this book will help you go through or get through or encourage you to keep going, keep pushing. So I'm going to ask everybody out there that's watching to go purchase that book. And Crystal, you can tell where it is, the Long Goodbye. Crystal, where can the audience actually get a copy of your book?
They can go to Amazon and they can either look up Dementia, the long goodbye, or they can Google my name, Crystal Flippen Morrison, and it'll pop right up on Amazon.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna tell you what, Chris. I'm gonna brag a little bit. I got a chance to get the book. I have it in my hand. I read the book, and I'm telling you all, like from front cover to back cover, it's an awesome book. It just shares a lot of things about life and dealing with situations in life. So I think that you all should really, really get that book. Okay. So Crystal, I'm going to actually say thank you. If you want to share anything else with the audience, something that you want them to know, that's pertinent information, I'm gonna give you the floor to do so. And how can people contact you if they have any questions?
What I would like to say, if you are a caregiver in any capacity, I would suggest that you get help sooner than later. Sometimes we as caregivers, we don't really realize that we need help until we're in the thick of something, but it's okay to ask for help. And you may say, well, how can I get help? I'm sure there's a lot of local agencies around that you can call to get help. In my situation, it was Volunteers of America. They provided weekly sessions with me to go over how to respond to someone dealing with dementia, and it was a great help. So I encourage everyone to get help because you can't do it by yourself.
Okay.
And as far as contacting me, you can contact Kittrick and he can get to me.
I would love to do that. You guys go ahead and contact me. You can go to my Facebook page, Kittrick L. Taylor. You can email me at kittricktaylor@yahoo.com. Kittrick Taylor, at yahoo.com or at hotmail.com. But Crystal, we're not done yet. There are some questions that the audience actually had. And I said that I would take questions and go from there. But with your husband, was there a diet change that took place at the time? Diet?
While he was at home, there was no diet change. Um, Oftentimes he wouldn't eat because, as I mentioned before, this was during the pandemic and his paranoia had increased. And so he thought that maybe I was putting some poison or something in his food and he
Oh
wouldn't eat.
wow, really? Okay,
So
no
if
diet.
you want to call that a diet change, yeah. But
He's
I
making
think,
his own diet. Okay,
he would eat if
wow,
he got hungry enough. So
right, right, exactly. Wow. Okay, the second question. Thank you for answering that, Crystal. The second question was on the lines. I think you gave the line support, where to get the support. So you answered that for that audience members that's looking and ask a question. She answered that earlier. And can you just repeat like that hotline or that line that they can go to if they have questions, or are you just referring back to the local place where they live?
I was working in conjunction with the hospital. When my husband was in the hospital, they gave me some resources that I can contact. But I also contact Volunteers of America.
Volunteers.
And
Okay.
yeah, that was the
Okay. Okay. And then the last question that one of the audience members asked was cost. You mentioned this in talking about the status, but the cost, was it a lot of cost when you made the change as a caregiver? Did you have to do any adjustments to your home, ramps, or anything like that? Was there a lot of cost? Because that is a lot of work. So someone wants to know, was there a lot of cost coming out of your pocket to make your home, ready or available for your husband? Okay. Okay, I'm not sure if we lost Crystal. Um,
Can you hear me? Patrick?
I can hear you now.
Okay,
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
And what I was saying is, when he was in the home, I didn't have to make any adjustments in the home.
Just
He was in the home for like 4 years, but when he went to the facility is when he started to decline physically and he couldn't
okay.
walk and he needed a wheelchair and things like that. But when he was in the home, he was able to get around and walk.
Okay.
And so I didn't have to make any adjustments as far as that. My biggest cost was getting him into the facility.
Okay.
That was my biggest cost because
Wow.
I had to go through a whole lot of legal things in order to get him into the nursing facility.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Well, I hope that answered your questions, audience. Krista, you were dynamic. I just want to say, and you can agree in closing, like the early signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's and dementia is pretty much, and it was in your book, was memory loss, difficulty completing daily tasks, and misplacing things, and unable to retract his or her steps. Am I correct with those?
That is true. And at some point, you have to realize that as you get older,
Okay.
yeah, you may forget certain things, but when it becomes um, more regular than usual, you should probably get that person diagnosed through a neurologist, and they have certain tests that they can determine if that person has dementia.
Okay. Okay. Well, Crystal, Flippen, Morrison, I thank you for coming onto the show. You have been a great help. Thank you for taking your time out. And at this point, we're going to say goodbye. If you have anything, you need anything from me, let me know. So if you've heard it from Crystal Flippins, you guys, Miss Morrison is very readily able to help you if you need help in this area. So that'll be the close of this show on dementia, Alzheimer's, and vascular disease. Thank you for tuning in. Listen, please tune in next week at 8 p.m.